Hello and welcome to The Final Bell, the official Geelong Cats podcast. It is great to have you with us for another week. We are brought to you each week by our friends at Morris, personal finance solutions, expert advice and finance specialists all in one place. We really appreciate the Morris team for supporting this podcast that we can bring to you every single week. I am joined, as I always am, by Meg McDonald. Meg, great to see you.
Hey, Lingy, good morning.
We wish we were catching up in better circumstances. It is a loss for the Cats against the Giants on the weekend. We're going to talk a bit about that game. We're going to look forward to Saturday night, a huge clash against the Western Bulldogs.
Absolutely enormous clash.
Bit of VFLW. We'll get to your questions a bit later on. And we'll also talk about potentially a couple of players starting to drift back into that team from that injury list, which has been a little too long to start this season.
No, don't. We better not start with that though. They'll accuse us of making excuses. There were too many X's and C's in what I was trying to say.
Yes,
there.
I got
you know
what you meant though. Let's not make excuses.
That's how tired I am this morning, Lee. My goodness.
Yes, we are also going to talk some pre-season form
go.
of yours and the AFLW team back into it, which is exciting. Okay, we're going to talk about a disappointing loss, but can I just start with a positive? You know, they always say it was a compliment sandwich. Start with the positive, bit of a clip, and then go to a positive after that. Positive, the debutante. Straight out of Ireland, Oisin Mullen.
This is an Oisin Mullen podcast now, I think. That's all.
Can you help me with the pronunciation?
I believe it's Oisin.
Oisin Mullen.
Oh, like if you were French.
Like
au revoir.
Olé. No, that's
no,
Spanish.
That's French.
I think that's Spanish.
I think Café Olé is French.
But I mean, I was here with my kids, and they were asking me, "Oh, who's number 34?" And I was explaining the fact that Mark O'Connor and Zach Tui are from Ireland, and they've come over here. They used to play Gaelic football. Well, this guy's a young player, but a young star in Gaelic football. He's made the huge move and taken on this challenge. And then when he first got the footy, basically almost a standing ovation, big round of applause.
I know.
Welcome to the Cats.
So exciting. I was in the stands below where you were in the stands, I think. And his first little touch was in front of us, a little nice little neat kick, but it just got better and better as the game went on because I thought he got that first possession, plenty of space, just a simple 45. But then the way he continued to work in the contest and find a release handball was unreal. And before we get into the specifics of his every possession, I will say, having been to Ireland recently, my appreciation for how far they've come and the life they're leaving is bigger than ever before. So he's been a fantastic presence around the club, and it was so great to see him debut.
He's nearly brought the house down with that left foot nilly goal.
Oh my gosh!
If it had gone through, would have gone. It was crazy enough. Even the build up to it.
It wasn't even just the kick, was it? He had a few involvements along the way, force the ball forwards.
I think the really and the most exciting thing about watching him was he definitely did not look out of place.
No.
He handled the physicality of it, which can often be one of the first hurdles Irish players have got to get over it because of the tackling component, the tackling to ground and that. I mean, it's a very physical game, Gaelic, but you don't have that real strong tackling to ground aspect. He handled it no worries and, in fact, mixed it up with a couple of other Giants players.
I just thought his evasiveness was unreal. I mean, it's something we're trying to work on this preseason, actually, that sort of if pressure's coming at you from the front, turn away from it, use your footwork and find a release, go towards your support. And his sort of 360-degree ability, I felt during the game, he's getting tackled, that's okay, I'll turn and I'll handball over my shoulder to Stewie, or I'll find a little release during the gap and all of a sudden we're off. So no doubt that he's staying in. I think even if we get some returns, I think he'll be in the team. Yeah,
it felt like that. It certainly felt and of course he's going to have the odd game where it's not so good, but he's only going to build on that sort of first glimpse there. Got a little stat for you too, a tiny little one. First time in history 3 Irishmen have played on the one team, and first time that 4 Irishmen have been playing in the same game. Yeah. Callum Brown for the Giants. So
how did Callum Brown play?
I didn't
know.
I wasn't quite as
well
fixed on him.
Destroyed us? No? Okay.
No, but it was great to see. Great to see him make his debut and really exciting for the future. There's the positive. I've got another positive to add about Graham Myers in just a second.
Gosh.
But hold that. because the game didn't go to plan.
No,
We can't beat around the bush. It was the Giants were very good and their pressure was outstanding. I think it was 22 inside 50 tackles, inside their forward 50 tackles compared to our 4. So their pressure was outstanding. Their work around the contest, excellent. And then one of the best players in the competition, Toby Green, up forward, really stood up for
We're
them.
fans, aren't we?
We are. We don't like him doing it to the Cats.
I know, which he repeatedly does, right? I think they're 3 from 3 down here. So possibly should have been a bit more aware of the threat before the weekend. But I thought, Cal Ward early around the contest, I was like, not only is he getting his hands on it, he's pulling off these kicks that are just scintillating. So it hurt us.
It seems to me almost with the Giants' approach to the way that they played Geelong down here at GMHBA Stadium, they take out the fear factor a little bit with the way they play. So excellent around the contest, high end pressure.
Yeah.
But they were prepared to bite off that kick that you're talking about with Callum Ward. They used the corridor a lot more than some teams here. A lot of teams think, it's a narrower ground, therefore the corridor's clogged up, I'll go wide.
Yeah.
Then you run out of real estate pretty quickly.
They're pretty direct.
The Giants took it straight up the middle, and that's where the Cats, I think, will be disappointed, and Chris Scott will review with the team pretty closely, is the Giants were able to get through at times a little too easily.
I think the other thing about the Giants, and this might be a little thing, but they're obviously a team that's not, I'm sure a lack of applause and playing in an opposition's home ground is not intimidating to them. I'm sure they're familiar with that throughout their history, playing in the circumstances where you are not the favoured team. So you watch them kick goals and build their own momentum and you think, they're going to be just fine, you know. Having said that, we came at them unsuccessfully.
Yes.
I think while we're on our RFIs, our room for improvements, sometimes I bring that footy terminology into my life outside of footy and people are like, what are you talking about? We talk a lot about the players that are out, but then also the system. Surely the two have to be linked. Surely you create a system based on what you believe to be your best 22 or 25 or whatever it is. So I find it hard when we're reviewing the game to disentangle one from the other.
No, I think that's fair. And as you said, we hesitate because it feels like you're making excuses. But if you remove, say, 8 of your best 22 out of the team, you replace that with a different 8. Now, not to say that 8 isn't good enough, but they are at very different stages of their careers. Can, say, a Mitch Nevitt, for example, or an Oisin Mullen, another example, they can do the things that the team needs them to do, but maybe for 70% of the game instead of 100%, which is purely a conditioning and a developmental thing.
Yeah.
So therefore, in those little moments where it just drops a touch, that system that you are talking or referring to can break down for a little period of time. Yeah. So it is absolutely linked. When you've got 23 players, all who are conditioned, prepared, experienced, they can do it, and they can do it for 99.9% of the time. That system holds up really well.
Yeah, and then you're more able to be in sync with each other. I think it's hard sometimes for, supporters and spectators to go, what does it look like when we're in sync and what does it look like when we're not in sync? And I was looking on the weekend and there are a couple of instances where I thought, we were all there for that, but no one flew for the spoil.
Yep.
So who's going to go? And the other side of that, I think, like Isaac Smith's knock over his head to the Stengel goal, I'm like, those are players who are in sync with each other and know what to expect. So I still thought there were moments of that stuff showing through, but over the course of the game, not enough of it. No,
not at all. As I said, wanted to have the compliment sandwich. Brian Myers is one of those players who just has elevated his game in what has been, again, let's not beat around it, a at times frustrating first half of the year. Yeah. It's just not quite rolling at times, then playing some brilliant football at other times. Yeah. Brian Myers has been pretty consistent right throughout both types of football with his creativity, with his ability to set up the forwards, with his work rate up and down the ground, and still leading the competition, I believe, in goal assists.
Yeah, he'd be going okay in the BNF, I reckon.
Have to be. On the weekend, 22 touches, 9 score involvements, 5 kicks inside forward 50, and I think I said a week or two back, good luck to any opposition defenders trying to read the cues of where he's going to kick the ball.
And that's the thing. It's his ability to find a mark inside 50 and or at least, ahead of centre. I think I watched the game in the weekend. I thought, we're throwing it on the boot more than we do when we're going well. And, going to contests, whereas his ability to, as you say, get up around the contest and find a free player is usually the difference. And we probably cost him a couple more goal assists with inaccuracy on the weekend, I felt.
Very true. Tom Stewart, also excellent on the weekend. I think he's building and building and building and just showing why he's one of the absolute premier defenders in the competition.
Oh, he built across the course of the game too, didn't he? I thought in the last quarter when we were really coming and the ball was living in our front half, it's because he was just intercepting everything. If only he could, sort of kick it to himself and then keep kicking it to himself. And
I'm sure he'd love to do that. Yeah. Unfortunately, Asava Radagalair, one of his partners down back, goes down with an injury, hamstring injury, which if you assume it's a standard-ish type hamstring, which is usually sort of that 3-week mark, but the report is he's running at training and full training next week. So that's the recovery now from hamstrings. They get them running early. Yep. That doesn't necessarily mean he'll be available next. Definitely not this week, but or the following week. The following week's a bye, so that's come at a good time. Yes,
I love that.
So Asava will then build into a really good rehab program and hopefully get back not too far away.
It's disappointing. I think he's one of those players who you think, when it comes to soft tissue, and this is the least, I claim no medical expertise, too powerful for his own good. I think that's in some of the male players, I think you are just that explosive that you're probably more at risk of doing a hammy than, say, I am.
Well, not something I have had to really worry about either, Meg. I'll be honest with you on that one.
But it'll be interesting to see how, obviously, DK went forward and then he went back, and I assume he will now go back with Sav out.
Well, I'm 100% with you. I assume the move is Sam de Koning goes back. Jack Henry, I feel, goes back to complement that.
Word on the street inside the club is that the forwards and the defenders fight over Jack. They both love him, and he's a pretty team oriented guy, so you would.
He is, but I'll say the defenders win this week because looking at the availability list, Gary Rowan looks like he'll come back for the Cats, so you'd assume he slots into that forward line. Jack Henry goes back with Sam de Koning, as you said. Jack Bowes is also available.
Yeah, we love that.
He was really important in the early parts of the year with his ball use. That flexibility that he provided with Zach Tui, Mitch Duncan when he was playing, to be able to rotate through wing, half back, little
and just
tiny
games
bursts.
under his belt, like we're saying. I mean, that's where your good use comes in, right? It's calm under the pressures of AFL footy.
Absolutely. The other one that I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to know about is Patrick Dangerfield. The club will no doubt update everyone right throughout the week. Chris Scott's press conferences, no doubt he'll be asked that question many times. At the moment, the word is really close. Will be a discussion between coaches, medical, and Pat this week. I
wonder what the breakdown is of Pat's sway on things.
You reckon it's not necessarily an even 33.33% split between those different groups?
No, I'm sure it's all medical.
But the little quirk to that discussion will be they play the Western Bulldogs Saturday night.
Yeah.
Then they have the bye week.
Yeah.
And then into Port Adelaide the following week. If they were able to say, Pat, one more week on the sidelines, it actually creates 2 more weeks on the sidelines and you're completely
what they're actually saying is we're facing one of the best midfields in the comp. What are we going to do about that?
And that's the real hard thing from a coach's perspective, isn't it? Because you say, well, it's got to be a medical decision. It's got to be the best decision the medical group can make. But coaches are realists too and say, we're coming up against Marcus Bontempelli and Bailey Smith and Jack McRae. Gee, I'd love Patrick Dangerfield to play.
Yeah.
And they will wrestle with that decision all week.
I know they will. And it's hard. I think when now we're at 5 and 6, you start thinking, does one game matter more than the next? And I think that's that stage of the season where you start to think maybe you can get tempted into that. But, I was pretty interested in, we've got the big Tom Hawk behind us. He did a presser yesterday and he spoke about the players' mentality and, we're always in it. He spoke about watching a lot of NBA and I think they'd be staying positive and knowing that you know, I mean, we're hearing this from the coach all the time, but it remains true that your best footy is good enough, and whether that comes immediately, I think we can fall into the trap of thinking, okay, now we'll switch it on. Okay, now we'll switch it on, and forgetting that it's going to be a build as players work back into the system. So whether someone like Danger or not plays or not this weekend, you're still looking for that build and you're still trusting that we will be okay in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, that's the hard bit though. So you need a ladder position
to
give you the best shot at that ultimate goal of winning the premiership. But also you, as you said, you can trust that their best football come the end of the year, if everybody's available and they have built that form. We know from last year, we know from times this year, it's good enough.
Unbeatable, yeah.
It is absolutely good enough. I go back to Richmond 2019. Sorry to bring up a team that had the wood over us there for a couple of years, but they had a real horror run of injuries after they'd gone premiership. Favourites to win the whole thing, beaten in a prelim final. The following year, there was... I think they had a block where I think Jack Rewalt, Cochin, Nankervis, they were all injured. And through that 5 or 6 week block, they just held on. Yeah. It might have split it 50-50, the wins. Just held on enough to launch into the back half of the year, built form, red-hot form finals. They win the premiership. That's, of course, what we're hoping happens with the Cats. Yeah. But that's where it's that fine line between, okay, we might drop a game or so more to come in this middle patch, but the end result can be a red-hot team come finals. The one thing I'll say with that Richmond team, they built such good form in the back half of the year, they still finished third on the ladder. Yeah,
that's a good point. I feel for the injured guys only in that I'm thinking about how I'm experiencing the game sitting in the stands and with absolutely zero sense of control over it. Much better when I'm playing. I think I mentioned that last week. And I think that's what they'd be battling as well. You're going, I want to get this injury right, but I want to be helping the team when, it looks like it could use a bit. It could use a bit of help. And that's a challenging part of rehab. You're thinking, I just want to be out there with you. And
players are naturally impatient, aren't they?
Yes. So suck it up, guys. It's for the best.
A couple other quick ones with the injury update. Maxi Holmes, who we both absolutely love. He's running full training next week.
Amazing, really.
Yes. Sorry, I went with my notes before. I said Sav's doing full training next week. That's Maxi Holmes doing full training next week. Sav will begin running next week. Sorry I just wanted to clear that one up. Cam Guthrie has commenced running on the Alter G, which is the treadmill machine that just takes a bit of the body weight, the load off the leg. So you're running at maybe 60, 70, 80% of your body weight. I know you know what that is, Meg, but just
no, I do. Hopefully that's good news. I think I've only done. You do it at 70%. You think, I'm an Olympian. Yeah. This is incredible. And then the next week they get you up to 90 pretty quick and then 95 and then you're back on the grass, which is good when that happens, and I hope that's what happens for Cam. And
Mitch Duncan, who I know everyone else wants back, increasing his workloads. Our medical team happy with progress, but we don't have much more update other than that. Again, I'm sure Chris Scott will be asked about that one. Quickly, Meg, before we get to some questions a little bit later on, the VFL on the weekend had a good win against Port Melbourne, 13-point victory.
Yep. Gus kicked 3, I think, the cap. Yep.
Yes.
Angus Byrne, yep.
Yes, and also the exciting one, Ollie Dempsey.
You mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't about Ollie, I can't remember, it might have been about Tanner, I think. Going back to the VFL and embracing and realising the fact that you are perhaps a cut above, and playing as such, and it looks like he did that. Yeah,
and that's not an elitist attitude or anything like that, thinking you're better than it, but it's okay to go, I'm not here to play at this level, I'm here to play at the top level, and I can see that, I can really dominate this level, and I want to then go on back and play AFL, and I think that's a really important mindset step in a young player's career. Yep. Ollie Dempsey, 27 touches, 1 goal, 6 inside 50s, 9 score involvements. I ran into him at the game. He's such a terrific young man. Yeah. Said good day to my kids, did all that, and then I just said, how are you going? And he was pumped about playing a full game. He said, I've had a few weeks as a sub. It's been great. I've loved just being in that AFL team and environment. He said, I'm pumped to play a full game, really just rip into it.
He was pumped on the field.
Yeah,
right. After his goals and goals assists, I was like, he was
and
up
then,
and about.
And then he launches in, hopefully, to another shot at the AFL where he gets a great opportunity again. So that's fantastic. He's putting his name up there. As we said, a couple more people coming in from injury too, putting their hand up for selection as well. VFLW, Meg, didn't quite go the same way. 7-point loss to the Cats.
It didn't. It'll be an interesting challenge for VFLW because, as mentioned, our AFLW is now back up underway, which we'll get to in a second. But I mean, some of the AFLW listed players will come out of that team, which throws the balance a little bit, I think. And, we'll see people like, Ab Fav, one of our favourites. She got 32 disposals. Charlotte Simpson, Sam's sister, or the other way around, depending on who you ask, got 28. So if those guys continue to step up, I'm sure they'll hold their spot at the top of the ladder.
So play Casey this Saturday at
Deakin, 12 o'clock.
You mentioned Sam Simpson too. That's another name who could come back in.
He could come back
rested.
in. I saw him. He was resting, watching his sister on the weekend, which was good to see.
Good work,
as he
Sammy.
should.
Good work. You mentioned it. AFLW is back to pre-season.
Yeah, it is.
How's the body?
The body's fine. The body just needs a little. I think I used to have someone in the program who said athletes need 10 hours sleep. I didn't get that last night, but I might have to start going to bed at 8:30. Actually, I'm still on the track at 8:30. Anyway.
Well, it was
fantastic.
That is the challenge, though, isn't it? So it's still a predominantly nighttime-based program, after work hours program. So by the time you've properly got there and warmed up and meetings and understanding what the purpose of the session is, you then go out and have a huge session. You don't just hit the showers and then straight home. There's recovery. There's probably debriefing. There's actually just chatting and catching up.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing, isn't it? When you sort of you've got a lot on your plate and then you get home and you think, all right, decompress. You should just be going to sleep. But anyway, that's enough about that, because it was just, it was so energizing to be back at the same time. We had a session on Monday night where we sort of said our hellos. We were all sort of around each other anyway. Provided some context for what we'd be working on this season. Had 3 drills on the track, and I was like, we are zinging here. We are just... Yes. Let's play round 1 now. And then into main training session last night, a little bit more decision making, a little bit more fatigue, not quite singing as much. And at that stage you say, it's week 1. Yeah, it's okay.
That's exactly right.
But no, I'm a busy gal, and you know who can help me out with that?
Please tell us.
Our mates Morris. Life is busy enough without more life admin. That's why Morris is now bringing their personal approach to personal finance. Their team is here to help you finance your next lifestyle asset with their free person-to-person service designed to find a finance deal that works best for you. Call Morris today on 1300 4MORRIS or head to morrisfinance.com.au.
Beautifully done, Meg. That is the perfect segue. You are very, very busy at the moment. You're doing plenty around the club, and pre-season is just going to add a whole nother layer to that. But let's take a break. You're not going to go and sneak off and have a nap. You're not getting a nap, because we've got a whole heap of questions from our wonderful listeners. And I might even have a question without notice just for you this week.
I think I spent mine in the previous segment, but let's do it.
Let's take a break. Back soon. Welcome back. It is great to have you with us on To the Final Bell. We are brought to you each week by our friends at Morris, personal finance solutions, expert advice and finance specialists all in one place. Big thanks to those guys for their support. Let's get into some questions, Meg.
Let's go.
Dive straight into it. This one's from Roxy. And we sort of touched on it a little bit in Seg 1, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. How much should ladder position be a priority for the Cats in the back end of the season? Mm-hmm. I think what Roxy means is, as we are building some form, as those players are coming back. We were talking about Patrick Dangerfield. Does he play this week, or does he then take the bye and play the following week? You want to finish top 4?
Yeah.
But when you've got a team...
You have to.
When you've got a team that's their best is very, very, very good, do you have to? You want that week off?
It also... The discussion at the moment is also about where other teams on the ladder finish. So, if you finish in a position whereby you play Collingwood, we're always going to play Collingwood at the MCG. Yes. But if you have to go to Brisbane and play at the Gabba, now those 2 results probably both have us finishing top 4. So I think I agree with you. I think the team would be in a position to say our best is better than anyone and we can play anyone, anywhere, anytime.
What I would jump in with is ladder position. I hear loud and clear what you're saying within the top four, but let's talk fifth and sixth. That becomes a priority if fifth and sixth might be, I guess, the Adelaide Crows who are playing terrific. I think Port Adelaide, the way they're going at the moment, are probably top four. But say they drop to fifth and Adelaide are sixth and you finish seventh and eighth, well, then you're off to Adelaide in an elimination final.
Yes.
Huge arch. So it becomes fifth and sixth become important.
Yes.
And also then a little bit of luck. Do you if you get through and you get through the following week, do you draw Collingwood in a prelim final? And as you said, whether it's Geelong who'd finished top of the ladder or Collingwood, it's going to be at the MCG.
Yeah.
Or do you end up in Brisbane in a prelim final? Yeah. Now, we're looking a long, long way ahead there, Roxy, but I think there's certainly always one eye on those jockeying for positions. But if you don't have a healthy list who have perhaps taken that extra week in the middle part of the year when their bodies are either injured or sore, ladder position's kind of irrelevant because you're not going to be getting across the ground well enough in September to beat these teams. Well,
you like to think that historically, across the past few seasons, we've banked wins early and then you can rest people, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the people that we'd like to rest are getting their rest on the injury list now. So I think hopefully that becomes less of a concern and, then it's about who you're playing and where you're playing them. So top four ideal, 5, 6, possibly just as important or just as good a shot at it.
Josh has got this one, Meg. Lingy, how does playing at Marvel compare to the other grounds? Josh, I experienced different versions of Marvel Stadium. Yes. I experienced Death Valley and that wing when it was just painted mud and you would wear the longest screw-ins you could possibly find to get some sort of grip, and it was rock hard.
Yeah.
So you would not walk for a few days because of the pain your feet and your calves and that were in.
That's no good.
It was so hard yet so slippery.
So God.
It wasn't a pleasant ground to play on. But once they got the turf right and they brought in those giant heat lamps and that so they can grow the grass better, it has improved dramatically even at the back end of my career. I loved it because you could be driving to the game and it could be the rain, the wind, it could be coming in sideways. It could be snowing for all I cared, and you knew you were turning up to what was going to be a good deck. The game was going to be fast. We were a good team by then, so the ball would be pinging around. And it was fun.
I've played one game on Marvel, Josh, and the same thing. I remember walking out onto the ground and having to get down and look at the grass to make sure it was real grass. I honestly thought it was turf. And I think it's a point of difference between the grounds that we play on usually, which can be more community-based, more exposed. To think that you can predict which way the ball's going to bounce and fly through the air was exciting.
The other thing I'd add, and it's weird because it's not like, you hear the stories of the Denver Broncos playing in the NFL. Kickers could kick the ball further because of the altitude. And a 60-yard field goal was achievable there as opposed to a 55-yarder, all that type of thing. I know that Marvel Stadium's not at altitude, but it felt like the ball just carried through the air quicker and further. The no wind aspect perhaps plays into that a little bit, but it felt like the ball was always coming at you slightly faster and the lights are a funny light at Marvel. I don't know if you experienced that.
Well, it makes sense of experience 6 years ago, but I also thought, almost like your perspective's a bit different.
Yeah.
You're in that
so the MCG
space.
or GMHBA Stadium, the high light towers, you'd be stiff to lose the ball in the lights. But Marvel's got that roof height lights coming off there, and you could occasionally get the wrong angle and lose the ball for a second, and then it's arrived on you very, very quickly.
So is there a home ground advantage to people that play at home there, do you think?
No, I don't think so, because you don't train there every single session and all. So, no, not as much, no.
Good, that's great news. Great news.
Thanks for that question, though, Josh. A really good question as the Cats take on the Dogs at Marvel Stadium this Saturday night. Sean asks, Meg, how do you shut down Libba and Bont this week?
Shawnee, I didn't look ahead, and I should have.
Can I throw in Bailey Smith and Jack McRae? And that's a very good Dogs midfield.
Look, they don't pay me the big bucks to answer these questions. Look, I think obviously we've got two mids or people that have gone back, played mid in Mark O'Connor and Blitzarves, who are pretty adept at combating or playing off key mids. Obviously, Liver and Bont are incredibly different players. You know, I know it's been said that Liver can be perhaps harder to stop because his work is so in tight and so gives, whereas maybe you can latch on to Bont a bit more. We're talking about maybe my favourite player in the comp.
Bont.
In the Bont. I love the Bont.
Yep.
You know, present GMHBA stadium company aside. Over to you. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm a little bit. You don't go like a hard tag on Libba.
Yeah.
I know you could argue that it's stopping it at the source, but when we've got a player like Tom Atkins who just lives and breathes the contest like Libba, we're going to have players hunting in hard. And then it comes down to 50-50 ball. Yeah. You've got to make it yours or you've got to halve it. You don't let Libba get control of that too often. Bont's the one who's just superb on the inside, unbelievable on the outside, a threat forward, and his teammates feed off him. Yeah. So I would be tempted, depending how they use the ruck situation this week. Is it Johnny Segler again? Is Reece even close? Maybe perhaps not. So Mark Blitzarves might be required to play more ruck, which hurts a little bit. What I'm thinking is Blitz awareness of Bont. Around stoppage and also drifting forward, because Blitz is so adept at playing defensive as well, that he could fulfill that role really well for the Cats. And just to take away that inspirational element as well of Marcus Bontempelli. You then Jack McRae just finds the footy at will, and Bailey Smith is a superb running player. Their midfield is excellent. Yeah. Their forward line doesn't always click perfectly, and their defence is slightly vulnerable, which is where Geelong's going to try.
This is what I'm thinking, is as much as the midfield is going to be much talked about, I mean, we could have them at either end. You'd like to think. We've got a back line who, as we saw as the game went on the weekend, are finding their groove again. I know Sam de Koning had it over Aaron Norton last year. So I think we might be able to neutralise some of the threats there. And then, obviously Liam Jones is having an incredible season. But other than that, I think Hawke and Jezza and whoever else plays as a key forward will give them a run for their money. They're pretty good at ground level. Having said that, I do like a lot of their small defenders. So
yeah, it'll be a terrific game, a really intriguing game where one team might have a slight advantage in one area and the other team can have an advantage in other areas. So thank you for that one, Sean. Hogan, what made you want to start playing footy?
I read that as what time do you want to start playing footy? I was like 6:20 in the afternoon, but you're right.
We need to get you some sleep, mate.
I know. Sorry about that. What made me start playing footy? Oh gosh, there'll be people who've heard this way too many times, but in short, I fell in love with footy, as lots of, Victorians, Melbourne, people around the country do. By the time I was born, my dad worked at an AFL club, followed him rounds, and ultimately didn't take it up myself, but loved it. And then I wanted to get into sport get into a team sport in my early 20s, because I felt sport had sort of exited my life, and I followed a friend down to play local footy, and the rest is history. That's the briefest version of that story I've ever given. So, yes. How about you?
For me, it was just always something. I can't remember a time when I didn't love it. Yeah. It was magical. Those big players who wore the blue and white hoops were superheroes, gods, whatever you want to call them. It's funny. I sat down and watched Old Home movie with my kids just to show them me at about the same age. I think I was about 7 at the time, and I flicked it on, and I'd forgotten I was dressed. I was dressed head to toe in Cat's gear.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Footy shorts, pulled up socks, a lot. And I'd just flash in and out of the camera. Mum had obviously bought this old, one of those old shoulder sort of ones.
Yeah, couldn't turn very well.
And
no steady cam.
Just every now and then I'd flash through because I was just kicking a footy to myself.
And you were lightning quick.
And Sorry, I walked through the shot. But just kicking the footy to myself, I did not sit still the whole time that Mum had this camera. My grandma and my grandfather were in there, so I loved seeing them. But then I'd just walk through, kicking the ball up, fully kitted out in the Cats gear. That's, as I said, I don't remember a time when I wasn't like that. I slept with my footy. I kicked the footy at lunchtime at school. I kicked the footy in the backyard. I went to games here in the old Brownlow stand when it was the wooden one, before the one that was knocked down for this one. I sat next to one of the nicest ladies there, Mrs. O'Donnell, who ended up turning. I went to her 100th birthday party.
Did you? Incredible.
She's Gary O'Donnell from the Bombers. His grandma, her brothers are the Rankin brothers who played here at the Cats in the 1920s and 30s. We just flew. That's where our seats were. We sat next to Mrs. O'Donnell, awesome. And I'd then walk home with Mum and Dad and my brother and my sister, and I'd be straight out in the backyard replaying the game. And if the Cats had lost, we'd make sure they won. And if the Cats won, they won by more in the backyard. So that was just my entire childhood.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. And I consider myself very lucky to still have a lot of those feelings. Like as we've discussed, we started pre-season this week and it still feels like Christmas morning, and you can do all the complex drills in the world, but going to the park and having a kick, you could just do it for hours. Like it's the best game.
It certainly is. Couldn't agree more, Meg. All right, that's enough of the questions from our wonderful listeners. Thank you for sending them in. I got a couple quick ones for you. Just want to rapid fire a couple of without notice at you. The Sam de Koning face mask, fan or not so much?
I'm a fan, but I'm a fan of everything he does. You know, I think obviously it's protective gear. There's a purpose for it, but
it was straight out of the NBA. Joel Embiid and Jaylen Brown.
And doesn't he look like he's straight out of the NBA? He's so tall, he's so lanky, his hands are so good. So, look, I'm a fan of anything Sam does.
Okay, good. Yeah. I read with interest this morning Tom Hawkins saying basically, I don't feel like I'm going to retire. Like,
I'm a fan of that too.
Why not? Yes or no answer.
No, I'm not retiring.
When Tom Hawkins, when Tom Hawkins finally retires, will he be the games record holder at the Cats over his great mate Joel Selwood?
Yes.
There we go. That's all I had for you, Meg. What do you got for me?
Well, speaking of Hawk, and we sort of mentioned it a little bit earlier, he was speaking about mindset, and obviously that's a challenge for the boys at the moment. What did you was there something that you engaged with that you sort of went back to make sure you were feeling a certain way? Was there any, I'll speak about myself for a second. I have embraced and like a routine where most mornings I'll get up, I'll take myself to a local cafe, go to Poco at the moment. I have a long black and I'll read some sort of sports psych book and I'll journal and I'll get myself feeling good about things, plus a bit of yin yoga. What were your go-tos from a mindset point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll try to be fairly succinct. Hopefully I don't waffle too much. I've almost trained myself and forced myself with my mindset throughout the week of the ebbs and flows of a week, when to be on and really intense. And my former teammates will tell me, when we were having a team meeting, we're there for a purpose. What are we going to learn out of it? What do we need to improve on? What do we need to really reward and recognise? What are we training today? What's the next thing? Who do I need to get over and have a conversation with just to help bump them up a little bit or talk to someone? I was on when I was at the club. But I couldn't live like that 24/7. I would have been exhausted. So I used to have almost a little trigger of I would, just before I left the car park here and I turned into Latrobe Terrace. Now, most of my career I lived down the coast, down Jan Juck Way. Just before I turned out there, it was almost this, I'm leaving what is the St Mary's Footy Club car park. Excuse me. And I would say to myself, I need to be back at training at this time tomorrow in order to, because training starts at this time and I do my prep. Back here, I'm going to leave my house at this time. So I would talk that little bit through. I'm going to be here at this time. I'm going to leave my house at this time. Now, switch off. And now I never switch off to the point where, all right, I'm off to the pub. Let's go.
No,
I lived a really healthy professional lifestyle, but while I was home, I wanted to take my dog for a walk along the beach. I would go for a surf. I'd spend time with my then girlfriend, now wife, and spend time together. I'd hang out with mates. We'd just other things that were really not thinking about football and the job I had to do, but I always knew where I needed to be the next day, what I had coming up. So it was a clear, organised mindset, but a really switched off one. And then as I drove back in, even the drive in, I'd be singing songs or whatever, listening to whatever I wanted to listen to. I drove through those same gates or entrance, and it'd be like, bang, okay, I'm on. Right, first thing I need to do is I need to go and do my wellness diary. I need to, it might have been some sort of testing, the squat jump test. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but to make sure I've got to do that, and then I want to go and talk to this Nigel Lappin, my line coach, and I'm on, and I'm in. So that real trigger of driving through that entrance and out of that entrance was a switch off and then switch back on in a big way. So that was my during the week set up. But when it comes to games, digging yourself out of either personal bad form, team bad form, or the bigger the moment, like a huge game and a loser leaves town final, was strip it back to the most basic aspects of what I did well and we did well as a team. So the bigger the moment, not trying to be a superstar, just trying to do the basics really, really well, the fundamentals, because I knew confidently I could do those things regardless of the situation. I could do them and I could get my belief off those, and I knew they were valuable. So it was kind of just an awareness that, okay, things aren't working, or this is a big moment.
You can't take these things from me, no matter what.
No, I can do these couple of things really, really well, and execute those. Everything else will flow from there and be fine from there. And so that's how I'd get myself back to form or get myself through a big game or a big moment.
That's awesome. If I responded like I'd like to, we'd have another 40 minutes. So it's good to hear, and we'll pick that up at a different time.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully I didn't waffle on too
No,
much there.
I'm very interested in all of that. Like, very.
Before we completely finish up, just another word from our wonderful supporters of this podcast. For years, Morris has been supporting businesses and the community to generate success together. Now they are bringing their personal approach to personal finance. Cars, boats, caravans, motorbikes, jet skis. That was another thing I used to do.
Did you?
Get out on the jet ski.
I don't think contractually you can do that anymore.
Yeah, not sure I could at the time either.
Yeah, right.
They are all about getting you out there living life. Let their team of finance specialists take on the life admin of arranging your finance so you can get on with life. Call Morris today on 1300 4MORRIS or head to morrisfinance.com.au. I used to use it for surfing though, so I claimed that it was surfing related.
Jet skiing is such a thrill.
There was one moment. I'll quickly indulge me in this one, Meg. I'm sorry to go on, but I was trying to make a point to the then fitness and medical staff about my post-game recovery being better than what they were doing as a group. So as a group, terrific. The flexibility they were adding was you had a choice. If you lived in Geelong, we were to meet at this particular pool. I think it was before we had all the wonderful facilities here, and we would do the recovery session at the pool. For those who lived down the coast, and there was about 6 or 8 of us at the time, we would meet at Torquay Front Beach and stand in the water for 10 minutes.
Doing donuts.
Yeah. So my argument was, if you let me surf on that next morning, I will be in that same water for roughly 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours straight. I'll be moving. I'll be all that mobility, everything like that, and I'll be better for it. And they're like, nah, you got to be there. It was pumping this next morning, and we knew it was going to be pumping. So we actually launched the ski at Fisherman's Beach, the jet ski. Yep. We went round to where we used to tow surf.
Wow. Yeah, right. The real deal.
Towed for about an hour and a half. And I said to my mate, we got one thing to do. We're going to have to drive the ski all the way back to Torquay Front Beach, drop me off at the 10 minutes.
Stand in the water?
With the team still in the water with them, and just stared at the fitness guy the whole time. And then he's like, okay, that'll do everyone in 10 minutes. I said, righto, I'm just heading back out to do another hour in the water, by the way. Thanks for that. Headed out, surfed again for another hour. So it was about a 3.5 hour session, this one. And when you're sometimes driving, I'm not in the water the whole time, but most of the time you're the one in the water. Fortunately, Monday training came round and the fitness guy goes, I get your point. All right, you just, if you can if the surf's good, you can surf, and you're doing better recovery than what we're doing in the 10 minutes. We're just standing there.
I thought you were going to get in trouble by not saying that you'd surfed, pulling up really well, and them saying, how good was that 10 minutes?
No, it was pretty
you were
obvious
full
when
disclosure.
they pulled, like the jet ski
Yeah,
pulled
yeah,
up
yeah,
into the
yeah.
boys who were standing there in the water, and I just dived in with them. I'm like,
Amazing.
hey guys, I said to my mate, just go hang out there for 10 minutes.
Amazing.
So yeah, that little things like that though was talking about that mindset thing.
Yeah.
It was a switch off. When I was out and the waves were good, and I was with a couple of really close mates, you're thinking about having a surf. You're thinking about catching the next wave, where you're positioning it, how good is it, the thrill of getting a great ride. For that couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, I knew deep down I was doing a great recovery session.
Totally.
But I also wasn't thinking 1 second about footy.
Yeah, and I'm sure you became more and more aware of what you needed and how you responded to it as your experience grew and as you became a more experienced player, which I think is, where the team's at too.
Yes. So there's a little insight in what I used to get up to, Meg. We better go. We better finish up. Thank you to all of our wonderful listeners. Thank you for the questions. A massive game this Saturday night. Cats taking on the Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. I'm going to be there for Channel 7 down on the Boundary, so I'm hoping I'll have a reasonably relaxing night. And
I'm going to be at the President's function, so I think I will.
Very nice.
Shout out. Thank you.
Do you get to relax at those?
Do at the away ones, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, you enjoy that one. Keep up the great work with the pre-season training.
I will.
Hopefully it
Started
goes
strong.
well. Thank you, Meg, for joining us, and thank you to all of our listeners. As I said before, we will be back again next week.